Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's RSIS seminar entitled Malaysia's Strategic Response to the Age of Trump. I'm Dr. David Han, Research Fellow from the Malaysia program of RSIS, and I will be chairing and moderating the seminar today. And we have with us our speaker, Mr. Shahriman Lockman. Shahriman Lockman is Director of Special Projects at the Institute of Strategic and International Studies in Malaysia. He is also concurrently a visiting fellow, senior fellow with the Malaysia program at RSIS. He has research interests spanning Malaysian foreign and defense policy, Southeast Asian maritime security, and Malaysia-China relations, particularly in the South China Sea context. He served as a consultant to the Ministry of Defense on Malaysia's inaugural Defense White Paper in 2019. Focusing on budgeting and implementation, and represented Malaysia in an academic assessment of common security challenges affecting the five power defense arrangements nations for 2020 to 2031 under the FPDA policy group. He is a member of the Malaysian chapter of the Council for Security Cooperation in the Asia Pacific, and he holds a Master of Strategic Affairs from the Australian National University. Given his expertise, I believe Shahriman will have much valuable insights to share on how Malaysia, under current Prime Minister Ahmad Ibrahim, is responding to the Trump era. The seminar will unpack the calculations behind Malaysia's approach. It considers how Malaysia weighs economic interdependence against strategic autonomy and examines the pressures that may arise as America's global posture continues to shift. Without further ado, I shall hand over this time to Shahriman to deliver his presentation. Shahriman, please.
Thank you. David, I just want to start by saying I really appreciate the Malaysia program for hosting me here. I've known people in the Malaysia program for some years now in RSIS. Thank you to all my friends here at RSIS. With a little help from my friends, I've got here. And thank you very much for taking the time. It's not easy to take time off on a Wednesday afternoon. It's one of those things where you halfway through work, or maybe you want to rush before Friday. So I'm sure you have other things to do, and really appreciate your coming here today. Actually, the title is actually I copied it from Cinder's talk at IDSS about maybe a week ago. Is it 2 weeks ago? Which was India in the Age of Trump. And I copied it and said, actually now it's become questionable, right? What is the age of Trump? How long it'll be and all that? Maybe we'll talk about it afterwards. I intend to do this more like a seminar, and not like a lecture with imagine me wearing my academic robe if I had one with my mortarboard. No, none of that. It'll be very informal. And this special projects thing actually doesn't mean anything. It means that I do things that other people don't want to do. And I also put my visiting fellowship with Malaysia program on my cover. So thank you very much, Ariel. Disclaimer. Must say disclaimer. We are a bit of a mongrel kind of institution because we are put under the government structure but outside government. Sort of like halfway in, halfway out. So which is why we have to be careful about what we say. So I'm really these are really my views. I'm not here to advocate for anything. I'm not here to defend Malaysia. If anything, you might have to resist me from saying something unkind. And again, it's weird, isn't it, when we talk about relations between two countries, we are trying to sum up interactions in the thousands and millions, right? And try to distill them into sort of like, okay, which is important, which is not. There's a lot of stuff that's important that I do not know about, especially in stuff that's cultural, educational, and all that. We have a bias in our discipline, right? We tend to privilege the defense side, foreign affairs side, sometimes economic side, and tend to neglect the other stuff. But in actual fact, the other stuff is important. It's just that I don't know much about them, so I'm not going to talk about the stuff, right? Also, some analytical risks. So I don't want to get into trouble with the people who are going on theory here, so which is why I didn't say theoretical or conceptual. analytical risk. I do not assume that Malaysia has it right in any way, or is, again, I have great respect for Quick, right? But I don't think we're hedging. I don't think we are optimizing for anything. We are not doing A to compensate for B. We are not, it's not like, okay, we do X amount of exercises with America, therefore we have to do X amount of exercises with China to compensate. And you'll see later that we don't. We handle relations with each country on the basis, yes, there is some concept of hedging, some concept of trying not to swing one side, too close to one side or the other. But is it as deliberate as the theoreticians might say or imply? I don't know. I don't think so. I've not seen evidence of that. I don't think states are that, in general. I'm not saying Malaysia. I'm saying in general. I don't think states are so organized and cohesive to be able to do that in the first place. So I don't, but at the same time, I will fall into that trap of imputing intentionality on certain things, right? So you have to guard that sort of thing, even when I say it, right? And I have this, I think all of us have this tendency to do a straight line extrapolations, even when we want to get ourselves against it, right? So, yeah, age of Trump, don't know, right? What is the age of Trump? Whether, whether it will, any of this will be, will persist after 3 years, right? At the same time, I don't want to say, I'm not saying that it's all chaotic, right? There is some intent, some strategic intent, some design, yes, PM and all that. They have an idea of what they want to do with the world. But the extent to which you can get the state to implement it, I think is very limited, especially when everyone's so busy running around, when people have limited policy bandwidth, limited information and all that. Okay, so yeah, throwing that away. This is something that really I got so irritated by this, right? This was in 2018. I'm still irritated by it. It's what, 8 years now, I'm still upset. There's partly because it's in a publication that I really respect and read every day, the New York Times, but I'm just saying that there is this tendency, right? Say, oh, we can color Southeast Asia into these countries, and red is, they're pro-China, the ones who are green, teal, yes, they are playing both sides. The blue ones are, the ones who are sort of like trying to counteract China. And I did not, I'm not trying to insult Singapore at all here. They did this, I didn't do this, right? The fact that Singapore is not shaded is not my fault, right? It's, yeah. See, Ariel was telling me they're going to record this, right? So, David, this is the closest I will ever get to a Netflix special. Yeah, so you have make sure that I don't ruin it, right? Netflix special or TED Talk. Yeah, okay, too late already, lah. So I mean, I really don't think that this is how. Yes, I was talking to Ariel before this. Yeah, it's a newspaper. They want to be able to present information as plainly as possible, but by doing so, I think you lose a lot of texture, right? It's not so straightforward. And also in the last, say, 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, especially under Najib as Prime Minister, there was this sense that Malaysia was like ground zero for the Belt and Road Initiative, right? That we were the focus of it, that we were getting all the investment and all that, and therefore, because of that, naturally, Malaysia will swing towards China. I'm not saying we are not. I'm saying that China is exceedingly important to us, but that does not make relations with America insignificant. In fact, this is what we are getting from America in terms of economic relations. And it's something that people don't really talk about, or rather don't notice. For example, America is the second largest export market for us. You would think it's China, right? Or you think it's Japan or something like that. No, it's America. China is third. Right? Singapore is biggest, obviously. Just sheer proximity and sheer integration of our economic relations. 200 billion in US investments since 2021, announced obviously. These things you have to follow up to actually keep track of it. I don't follow up. 20% of the flow, not just stock, yeah, it's flow, since 2018 from 2018 to 2023. A big chunk of it comes from America. And this, I must say, is undercounted. Even this amount is undercounted. Why? Because not every US company that invests in Malaysia does so while being incorporated, say, in, what's the place where they always incorporate? Yeah? No, Joe Biden's area. Delaware, right? Not all of them are incorporated in Delaware and invest in Malaysia. No. What they tend to do is incorporate a subsidiary in Singapore and then invest in Malaysia. Or they are incorporated in Ireland, Apple and all that. If you pay for Apple products, you're paying to a company in Ireland, not in America, right? For tax reasons, they are incorporated in Ireland. Or in the Netherlands for reasons I don't understand. But essentially, the stats will show, investments from Singapore, investments from Ireland, investment from the United States. But in actual fact, a huge amount of that is actually American companies doing it. The good thing, the other thing about that my trade people at least value, maybe normal nations don't know this, but my trade investment people value about US investment is that heck a lot of work, jobs get created by investments, and a lot of them get trained and promoted to high positions in Malaysia. And that does not tend to happen, with respect. I mean, we appreciate money from Japan, China, and so on and so forth, but that does not tend to happen with Japanese companies. Japanese companies, until now, Mitsubishi is still a Japanese CEO, in Malaysia, I mean. Whereas in, I just got this list before on the way here. Local operations, Malaysians at the top, Intel, Keysight, Texas Instruments, Western Digital, Google, Vantage, Equinix, Microsoft, JP Morgan, AIG, FedEx. They're all Malaysian bosses for local operations in Malaysia. Again, that does not tend to happen with companies from other countries. 50 to 55% of US companies, in fact, have Malaysians as the head of operations. So it's, it's truly high value investments. Fair bit of tax being paid to the Malaysian government, that's nice. And on average, they pay more than everybody else. Almost twice, I guess. My math is not so good, but twice lah, yeah? So all that stuff. And a lot of it by Fortune 500 companies, which provide alongside with, the money, it's also the tech and so on and so forth. Penang was actually built by Intel. Intel arrived in Penang in 1972, so they had their 50th celebrations some years ago. Intel started at what was essentially nothing, and through sheer, what's the word for it, sedimentation of industries. This company requires this part, therefore the factory next to it builds it. This factory needs that part, and therefore the factory after that, builds for the second factory, so on and so forth. All that sedimentation that happened over the last 50 years has created quite a remarkable ecosystem, which puts Penang at the center of, at least Southeast, well, not apart from Singapore, major part of the semiconductor supply chain. During COVID, obviously a lot of flights were cancelled, but the flights to Taipei were still profitable. Not because they had passengers on them, but because what was in the bellies of those aircraft. Semiconductor parts. Electronics do not get shipped here. It takes too long. They get transported through just-in-time manufacturing, and the cargo in the belly of those aircraft paid for the flights throughout COVID, even though there were only maybe 10 passengers inside. During COVID also, a certain American truck called the Ford F-150 could not be built. Again, because we went on lockdown. So when we shut down, Detroit had to shut down because a lot of the chips that went into the F-150 came from Penang, or at least float through Penang. Nothing comes entirely from one place anymore, right? So you'll be like, design, the difficult bits get done in Taipei or Taiwan, somewhere in Taiwan, get shipped to Penang, or sorry, flown to Penang, and then you see these pictures of these ladies in sort of like clean suits, looking down on microscopes, trying to test them, right? They are doing testing. They're doing final assembly, essentially. And that's what Penang is very good at. So yeah, that's essentially what started with Intel now has become a major ecosystem that has been sort of like expanded still with Chinese investments, you know, and enhanced through the China's plus one strategy. Okay, the defense relations. So my old man, not your old man, my old man, Mahathir Mohamad, was also, I mean, in spite of what he said, he's vociferous in his criticisms against America, and yet it was under his time that Caspar Weinberger came to Malaysia and decided that, okay, having learned what Mahathir wants out of the defense relationship, negotiated with my defense people something called the Bilateral Training and Consultative Group, BITEC. If it doesn't mean anything, that's the purpose of it. It is deliberately innocuous, deliberately doesn't mean anything, right? Because that suits Malaysia's position here. We don't want to advertise the relationship with America so much. Expanded into the Malaysia-US strategy talks, and last year, I was quite surprised, signed another MOU with the United States. We do more bilateral and multilateral exercises with America than we do with any other country, which is, you know, something you don't quite expect, right? You'd expect us to do more with FPDA countries and all that. No. More exercises with America, 14. So the interaction is more than once a month if you average it out, right? This is actually an old number, but that's all I could get, 270 million in maritime security assistance, including 18 Scan Eagle UAVs. And there is the train of, you know, the gifts, the handovers are still coming. Reason I'm using the word handover here is that actually it was a transfer. But we insisted, so someone insisted that Malaysia pays a bit for it. So it was like, I think it's like a nominal sum. So that, I think in these days you have to sell to Congress the notion that we are not giving away things, that people are buying from you, right? So we pay a bit of money, but it's very small money. So one Coast Guard cutter came last year, another one you're working on. And, you know, I was asking people in defense, what is it that's special about the relationship? Well, nothing special compared to, say, you know, what Singapore does. That's a lot, right? I mean, but what we do apparently is not small potatoes either. This was interesting. November 2024, apparently this is the first time that an American tanker saw refuel a Russian combat aircraft of this nature. They somehow managed to get the hoses to fit. But yeah, this, I don't understand why, but to my Navy, to my Air Force people, this was big to them, to be able to do this with America. It was an assertion that, okay, we might be operating, some of our platforms might be Russian, but we can still operate with Americans. It doesn't harm our interoperability with America. This exercise was pretty interesting because it involved flying people out of Kuantan, which is in the peninsula of Malaysia, flying them all the way to Sabah and parachuting, and that's Mount Kinabalu in the background. And, you know, why did we do this? Well, I'm sure there are some parts of the American system who wanted something that flew over the South China Sea to send a signal, right? It was a good signal to send. And I think there are some parts in my system who said, well, okay, we'll do it. Doesn't matter. You know, it suits us as well because this is relevant to a situation, an operation like Lahad Datu. You know what happened in Lahad Datu, right? Now, 2013, Sulu sort of fighters crossed over into Sabah, not Indonesia, sorry. Crossed into Sabah cause a bit of trouble, right? So it suits us, it suits them. Maybe the signals are mixed, but you know what? Both benefit. So let's do it anyway. Last year was this. Oh, not so clear. So they were shooting HIMARS and also Astros. You got people from Arizona National Guard to come all the way. And shoot these things. And apparently, to the army, it's a big thing. Again, I don't understand these things. I wish the military studies people or strat studies people will tell me why is it significant that we are doing this with Americans, but the army said, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, but it's complicated. You know, having said that the economic relationship is great and beneficial to us, having said that, the military relationship, even though it's sort of like under the radar and it's growing, yeah, it's complicated. So if you ask the Malaysian, I mean, because first year theory tells you that, oh, if you face a situation like you do in South China Sea, the logical thing to do is to find a big brother and try to balance out against the other big brother, right? Okay, that bit loaded, the term big brother, especially when Hishamuddin used to say it. But the mental sort of like framework tends to be, I mean, the Malaysian, of course, I'm not talking about every single person, but the mental sort of mindset tends to be, oh, this is going to be provocative, this is escalatory. So it's more of a spiral model in our heads rather than the deterrence model. If you do the Jervis sort of typology here. And the whole non-alignment thing is very strong, especially in the foreign ministry. Defense, not so much. But the foreign ministry, they have really truly imbibed the Mahathir non-alignment, third world, global south thing. And it's still there. It's still strong in their heads. So, and also, yeah, it's weird, You mention alliance to them, it's hard for a Malaysian establishment person to think of an alliance in terms of two equals. An alliance to them, especially with a big country, is by definition of subservience. So it sort of like colors how we see, say, the Philippines. The manner in which we talk about the Philippines is colored by that understanding of what an alliance means. And there's sort of traces of post-colonial sort of like slight cringe, right? We have to show that we are independent and we are not Western, we are not lackeys of the West, and therefore and also the Asian nationalism is in brackets, in quotes because I don't have a good word for it. It's the sense that it's time for Asia to rise. That no Kishore Mahbubani fan here. But a bit like that, right? Pride in the rise of Asia, that sort of thing, right? There's a bit of that inside the mental sort of map of the Malaysian decision maker, and also Muslim solidarity, and that is very pertinent to the relationship with America, simply because America is seen as, I think it's pretty clear by now, not an impartial, honest broker on the Palestine issue. They still can upload to YouTube. Huh? Nanti 30%, I cannot enter, upload denied. But, so yeah, it's the role of the United States in the Middle East sometimes makes the being seen with America pretty toxic sometimes. Yeah? A visit by an aircraft carrier, US aircraft carrier, it's greeted with both, okay, yeah, it's great to have an American carrier here, but also, oh gosh, do we want the public to know about it, right? Do we want the public to see this huge boat, docking with 5,000 American kids, even though they have $500 in their pockets? Never mind, it's something that people regard with a bit of anxiety. And so the Palestine issue is really, really serious. Also, Because, and I say this with respect to my people, because we are far away, right? When you're far away, you don't have to deal with the actual reality of the situation, right? If you are Jordan, you have to deal with the reality of Israel, even if you don't like Israel. If you are Saudi Arabia, if you are UAE, if you are whoever in the region, you have to deal with the reality of Israel. You can't really be pure about it. We can be pure about it because we're far away. What relations is there to be impacted? There's no relations. What trade relations? All indirect. So yeah, that creates a lot of space for my politicians to go all out, to go 110% on Palestine issue of Palestine. Because what can they do? Well, they can send some people to knock off some of the Hamas people based in Malaysia, but happens once or twice. But ultimately, does it impact fundamentally Malaysia's interests, or does it harm our access to places? No. But it makes us unpopular in Congress, in US Congress, for example. Yeah? Nation ambassador is not likely able to knock on the door of every single person in Congress because some of them are very good friends of Israel. And why do you not have relations with Israel is perhaps one of the first questions they'll ask. I put CF Indonesia there, and Alex, yeah, we'll talk about it more. But so Indonesia is interesting, to us interesting. I'm using it as to demonstrate, even though, almost similar situation far away from the Middle East and so forth. But I suspect that the Indonesian intelligence and defense establishment continues to maintain relations with Israel, right? And in fact, admires Israel to a certain extent, right? The closest I could date the first interaction was probably 1970 in Ken Conboy's book on Intel. Indonesia bought something like 16 A4 Skyhawks from Israel, secondhand, but it was done, I think, through an airport near here. Paya Lebar, not Changi. But the Indonesians at least have interactions. I've been trying very, very hard to actually try find, or at least is there at least some secrets of back door where we interact with Israel. I can only find evidence of one, but that is not as Malaysia. It's as United Nations, as UNIFIL troops in southern Lebanon. They have to interact with IDF because you have to tell them, I'm going here, please don't bomb this area while we're here. So that's the limit of the interaction that I can find. I can't find any interaction, at least no evidence of, and if you talk to Malaysian diplomats in UN, at least some of them, they will quite proudly say that, when we bump into the Israelis, we don't talk to them. And they will criticize other countries, the Indonesians, backslapping with them, but we are pure. They don't use that word, but something like that, right? There is that almost pride in not having interactions with Israel. So every time America is seen in that context of being close friends with Israel, it really harms our ability to engage openly, at least. But hey, Trump comes to town. So by the way, I still do not know who decided to play Hawaii 5-0 when he arrived. I still don't know. I'm sure to find out. The fact that he did the dance and all that. I mean, it was actually very, very. Everything was very. Just fell into place. I was very nervous about this visit. I thought something bad was someone's going to get hurt. I thought. But no, my PM was invited into the Beast. They traveled all the way to KL. Apparently, till now, even after this, cumulatively 7 phone calls between Trump and Anwar. Cumulative contact hours, you academics, you also count, right? Cumulative contact hours, right? 5 hours, cumulative contact hours. Trump somehow can be engaged if you know how to engage him, what to say, in ways that maybe previous presidents were difficult to engage for us. So Biden, 0. Not a single phone call. Cumulative contact hours, 0. Okay, maybe across the room during APEC, but no. No contact. So in some ways, I just wonder, I was just talking to, on the way here with Ariel, is Trump a leader that somehow Southeast Asians understand more than, despite his unpredictability, the fact that he's nakedly transactional, the fact that he's other things, I will not say because YouTube, right? Maybe we know how to handle him better. So yeah, in spite of all that, in spite of the antipathy towards the United States, in spite, people saying, supporter of Israel, bully and country that makes the competition with China worse, some people say, not all of them say, people still expect a Malaysian PM to be pragmatic enough to be able to handle relations with the President of the United States. They do not demand total isolation. No, that's not what they demand. They demand that you Prime Minister of Malaysia, yes, don't get too close, but you must be able to handle him. And Trump, Malaysian government expended a lot of resources trying to get him to come. People like to make fun of how he is claiming credit for all these peace agreements, but on Thailand and Cambodia, yes, it has restarted again and again, but at least at that point in time, Trump was instrumental. No way it would happen without Trump. Trump threatening Thailand with tariffs was instrumental on this. But of course, we also had to sign the trade agreement with the United States, which is getting controversial in Malaysia. Look, I'm not a trade person. What I can say about it is this. The way we understand the ART is this. Yes, unfair. Well, what is your choice? What is the alternative? The alternative is worst, not having an agreement, number one. The other thing is that people are complaining about these clauses which says that if America imposes sanctions on country X, we will have to somehow pay attention to that. Our trade people's understanding is that it is a requirement to consult. It does not mean that we have to follow, we have to adopt those sanctions. So in the past, they would impose sanctions on Iran. We don't even have to have a meeting with America, right? We would just say, well, that's your thing. We're going to do our thing. But now we are at least compelled to be in the same room and talk about it with them. Whether we actually adopt those sanctions, at least in my trade people's calculations, is something else. There is also, there is quite a massive agreement. I do not realize about 400 pages, including the annexes. So I have a colleague, Ari, who does trade for us, and she had to read all 400 pages of it, poor lady. And so yeah, a lot of the terms we don't think will be even implemented. It's there for various reasons. Sometimes it's there as red meat to various lobbies. For example, there is this requirement for zero tariffs, 0% tariffs on exact number, 28,783 live swine from America. I do not know how you're going to transport live swine of that. Poor live swine, right, all the way from the other side of the world. And in my head, I was thinking, who's there to actually count, right? Oh, 28,784 tariff. I don't know who does that. But that is, with a Muslim majority country, we are very unlikely to buy 28,783 live swine from the United States. But it's there. I also asked, how come it's so specific? Apparently, it's a percentage of a bigger number. I said, it's there to tell the agricultural lobby that we got you something here. Yeah, vote for Trump next year. That's the thing, right? And I hate to admit it, but really, it's the man does have. Anwar does have this instinct for Trump. Yeah, I think he is. He knows. He's even willing to risk jokes in front of Trump. Remember he said, like, oh, you know, I went to prison, you almost got there, right? He said it in front of Trump, right? In front of the press. I thought it was so risky, but that's him, you know, he's good at reading people. And I think we are lucky. I'm not aiming to end with Hidup Anwar. No. I'm just saying that, you know, yeah, it's become so personalized. American politics is being so personalized, and it helps when you have a prime minister who is able to engage. There is a visit being planned. I'm not sure when it will be announced, but that will be the next challenge, I guess, for Anwar, to go there and hopefully not be put in a difficult position. You know, hopefully it goes well, right? So yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Shahriman, for your insightful analysis. And I shall take this opportunity to kickstart the discussion by asking you a few questions to seek your responses. And after responses, I shall proceed to the Q&A session to invite the audience for the comments and questions. I think the first thing which I'd like to ask of you is that you mentioned that for Wisma Putra, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Malaysia, right, this strong adherence to non-alignment is something that is apparent. How does it differ, right, from, let's say, with the Prime Minister himself, or the Prime Ministers of the past, as well as, you know, the defense establishment? Because you focus a lot on non-alignment as being something that is very deeply ingrained into the Wisma Putra mindset, which also is linked to the point that you were making just now. If there were an American aircraft carrier in Malaysian ports, right, some would say that it is a good thing, but there will also be hesitation within Malaysia that, do we want to play this up? Now, who are these folks, right, who have concerns about US military presence and those who would not? So I just hope that you can make some further differentiation on that point. And the second thing which I also want to highlight, or which I want to ask is, you know, recently we see that, you know, Trump, in response to the Supreme Court ruling, right, is going to, again, make some drastic changes to tariffs. I think this is not surprising given how Trump is like. Now, how do you think will Malaysia or the Anwar government would respond to that kind of behavior, right, from Trump? I'd like to hear your thoughts on these comments and questions.
So, I think, I know the Singapore MFA people here, and I really don't mean, and yeah, some of you have ex-MFA. MFA is the sort of ministry where you have time to imbibe these things. The ideological, the principles. Whereas people at, say, trade, right, they're a bit busy when to do. I'm not saying that you have nothing better to do. No. I'm saying that this is your bread and butter, right? And so you internalize these things, and you learn about these things. You write about these things with your position papers and all that. Whereas the typical MITI person, Ministry of International Trade, or typical MINDEF person doesn't quite, you know, have that kind of exposure. It's not part of their daily language, I think. So which is why I think MFA in particular, you know, that's where the orthodoxy is. And I use the word orthodoxy not as a criticism, you know, it's, you know, that's, you know. So yeah, these are the principles and so forth. So you can see, for example, when in the past, I'm not sure if it still happens now. In the past, you'll have an aircraft carrier visiting, and immediately MINDEF international policy division will say, yes, let's host it. And the file will go to multilateral security division and MFA. And that is where usually someone will pause and say, hey, what are the principles here? What are, you know, the more political questions are raised in that setting rather than, you know, policy MINDEF tends to be more on the technical side of things and just want to get things done, and probably they don't pause enough sometimes, you know, to think about the bigger, broader principles. So yeah, so I mean, to transition to your question about who would be a concern when an aircraft carrier visits. Right? I mean, so I don't want to give the impression, and I'm sorry if I gave the impression that, oh, when an aircraft carrier visits, we welcome it with great reluctance. No, there are people who are very, thrilled to have these kinds of visits. Right? But I would imagine that the cops will be a bit concerned, simply because it attracts attention of the sort that, I'm sure. Singapore has had this history of of having security issues with regards to foreign carrier visits, right? It's not specific to Malaysia. I think the political calculations, people in the political parties, people in UMNO, people in PKR, the more ideological ones will be a bit dismayed, or maybe dismay is the wrong word, but sort of like, reluctant. Yeah, there are people in Anwar's political party who are steeped in this Asian nationalist stuff, and so they will be questioning, oh, is this going to annoy China? There are people in his party. There are Islamists in government, also in opposition, who would be very much against having any American presence. But in general, the armed forces, they like it. They like it a lot. They learn a lot from all these interactions with America, in ways that they might not learn from other partners, right? So no, again, not to downplay the China relationship. I think the China relationship is important, it's growing, but we do only one exercise with China every year, and not always every year, right? And they don't learn as much from the interactions with the Chinese, simply because right now, it's still guarded, it's still very scripted, the exercises, whereas the Americans like to make it slightly complicated and throw in, suddenly the scenario changes and you have to adapt, and that's what our servicemen like. It feels real. It feels like a real combat scenario. Whereas, again, the aims are different, right? The one with China is engagement, confidence building, signaling, and all that. With America, it's been so long, and it's become as much about developing our own capacity as a political thing. Oh, tariffs. Sorry. I couldn't read my handwriting here. So good news. The ERT has not actually come into force. There is a clause in our agreement on reciprocal tariff. I don't know. Please don't quote me on this. It's something like the agreement shall come into force when the two sides have, gone through the constitutional processes and have notified in writing and all that. That hasn't happened. So, oh joy, sort of like now we get 10%, or is it 15? I forget. All right. So we haven't signed it, and there is following now we have a new trade minister who probably not as keen as the previous trade minister on this, and he has initiated a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis of the ERT, although I very much doubt that any cost-benefit analysis will ultimately say no. I think the cost is very big. The C is huge, right? As in not for not signing, or maybe you can see the B is huge. Also, I don't know how long it'll take, right? The CBA for CPTPP took months and months, because it was outsourced to, I think, one of the accounting firms. I think it was PricewaterhouseCoopers, something like that. And they are the ones with the capacity to actually have this modeling that you chuck in all the variables and they run the computer for, even in this day and age, the computer runs for days, maybe weeks to come up with the answer. And the answer is usually 42. Sorry, inside joke. So it's, I don't know, because I haven't heard about who is doing the CBA. My impression is internal. And if it's internal, again, with respect to my MITI colleagues, I don't know if they have internal capacity to do it. So I'm just confused about the whole CBA thing. But it will be answered eventually.
Okay, thank you, Shahriman, for your responses to my comments and queries. Right now, I'll open this time to the audience for questions and comments. I will take 2 questions at a time. So before you speak, right, please introduce yourself briefly, right, and keep your questions or comments succinct. Yes, please. This side, Alex first.
Okay. Alex Alifiano from Indonesia program. Thanks, Shahriman, for your enlightening presentation. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that with regard to Malaysia, there hasn't been much domestic backlash for signing the ART with the Americans regarding the Trump tariff. Of course, in your case, you guys finished it a month earlier than us, which was just last week. But yeah, I can tell you from the Indonesian experience that there's a lot of backlash, there's a lot of accusations that the Indonesian side were basically giving with the stars that they're poor, very poor trade negotiators. And I think the local domestic commentator was already saying that this is the most serious challenge to President Prabowo, political challenge ever since he assumed the presidency 1.5 years ago. But from your presentation, it doesn't seem that it becomes as much of a big deal in Malaysia. Could you maybe can help and explain why is it the case? Thank you.
Hi, Shahriman. You do another US program. My question is sort of tangential to Alex's, right? Because USTR Jameson Greer has now come and said that Washington expects, right, America's trade partners to live up to their agreements. So I don't think just because the niceties of the ART have not gone through, that the president, again, via social media once again has said that, right, he's expecting, right, sort of these agreements to go forward. So given that, if you lock in those ART rates, right, you're looking at 19% versus 10%, maybe 15%, who knows. Right, so then, right, how do you see the government dealing with, right, the backlash of, right, sort of, having given away the store, right, for basically no gain whatsoever?
Yeah, Alex, I think there is backlash. Maybe it's not so obvious because perhaps on the opposition side, they are busy quarreling among themselves. They're not as organized. The biggest possible sort of like person who was willing to really articulate it calmly and plainly would have been Mahathir, but Mahathir is not well now. He's 100 years old. He just fell down, not doing so well. I mean, the backlash, I think is also mitigated by good news, I think. The news has been quite good on the economic front, right? Ringgit used to be 4.2 to the dollar, US dollar, now is 3.9. Confidence restored. We are suddenly, I think, was it the Finns who decided to put in a lot of money in Malaysia all of a sudden? So there's confidence now in the Malaysian economy. Our debt to GDP ratio was very high because of COVID. We spent a lot of money during COVID, but now Anwar is trimming that debt. So people appreciate that kind of thing. But I mean, do they feel it? Probably not, right? But at least they are hearing good news for now. right? Inflation is 1.7%. I mean, you know, that is just best possible headline you can get, right? 6% growth, quarter to quarter, 1.6%, 1.7% inflation rate. So I think that's why, yeah. But the backlash will come. I mean, in relation to Adrian's question, right? I mean, it will come. It will be more serious, and the difficult questions will be asked, right? Again, Adrian, just use the live swine example here. We really don't think that America has the capacity to enforce everything and expect everyone to lockstep implement everything right away. You know, I think there are certain countries that are higher in priority in terms of pushing them to implement. So South Korea is higher. That's why South Korea, why haven't you ratified? I'm going to charge tariffs on your cars, right? Malaysia can get away with things sometimes. In the way that we are somewhat getting away, I wish Charlie was here, Charlie Brown. You know, this ship-to-ship stuff that's happening, right? I know it's not all related to the ERT, but it's interesting to me because when I first heard about the ship-to-ship thing, so what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that on the east coast of Johor, there are these ships that are like docking every single night or day, sort of like transferring oil, usually Russian or Iranian, from one ship to another, and then transporting it to China, right? I was like, you know, getting palpitations over this. I thought, oh my God, this is terrible. This is like going to Trump is going to come to us. And I thought he was going to raise it when he visited KL, right? But the American system, for better or worse, well, I mean, I guess every system has limited bandwidth. And Malaysia is not that high up in priority in terms of, what are they doing? How are we going to push them on this A, B, C, D, E, F, G now? We get away with stuff. How long can we get away with stuff is something else. I guess, stuff like chips, for example. A lot of chips were being redirected. Very high-tech NVIDIA chips were redirected, from Malaysia. Or at least, if they're not being redirected, people are coming into Malaysia with suitcases filled with hard disk drives to train their models on data centers that happen to be in Malaysia. Is there immediate clampdown? No. I think it would be very serious if, say, I don't know, Taiwan did it, or Taiwan wouldn't, sorry. I mean, more something that's higher in the imagination of the United States, right? They will be immediately clamped down and punished. But Malaysia is, fortunate, right? Yeah, right. But I do worry when will the other shoe drop, right? Say, okay, no. You've had your time to implement this. Now you are really in trouble this time. I don't know, right? I mean, that happened to us in the early 2000s with the AQ car network. Remember there was a lot of diversion of sensitive materials for nuclear that went to Iran. The shoe did drop for us on that, and they came down very hard on us. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions here and here? Jane first.
Jane Chan, American Security Program, RSIS. Thank you for the talk, Shahriman. You alluded a little bit to Malaysia and China's relationship. I'm very curious, in how now that Anwar has more FaceTime with Trump, has that relationship, the Malaysian-China relationship, becomes more difficult for Kuala Lumpur, or has it actually given KL more space vis-a-vis Beijing?
Hello, Faisal from RSIS Regional Security Protection Program. I actually have two questions. The first question is, since you earlier mentioned about Malaysian ties or lack of ties with Israel, so given that Prime Minister Anwar has shown a very impressive level of hospitality when President Trump arrived, came recently last year, how is it that, from what I understand, that US did not extend an invitation to Malaysia to join the Board of Peace? That's the first question. The second question is, what's the deal with Nick Adams now? Yeah.
So Jane, thanks for the question. So more the hobby horses, right? You can't see Malaysia, China, and Malaysia, America separately, right? So they are very upset with us on the ART. Like I can't say exactly how that was transmitted to us, but they're very upset. Especially the clauses that say that if US were to impose export controls on a certain on any country, that we will have to consult with them on the matter. So people were called and people were told off. And I think they also want a separate side letter with us eventually, but that hasn't happened yet, to sort of like address this. They want it in writing. So yeah, it's at the same time, I think Beijing understands, right? So they're upset about the export control thing, the third-party export control clause and all that. But I think they understand it when we have to do, like I keep telling people, whenever a Malaysian minister speaks in Parliament and says something assertive on the South China Sea, which they do have to do from time to time, and I will always get calls from reporters or foreign diplomats asking, is this a shift? And is this going to annoy China? I can confidently answer that, look, China understands that you have to do certain things and say certain things at certain points in time. And credit to them, really. I think there is, the media portrayal of China tends to be, totally inflexible, quick to reprimand and all that, but I think they at least with Malaysia, they show a great deal of flexibility. But I know you didn't ask about this, but I'm now going to take this opportunity to mention South China Sea a bit. So I think, and I know someone, nobody, answering question, nobody asked me. Never mind. I think the South China Sea question will be a factor soon enough. What's happened is that there was a discovery that was made in 2019 of a gas field called Lang Lebah. This is huge. Lang Lebah is huge. It has 7.5 trillion cubic feet of gas. And last year was supposed to be the year they made the final investment decision, FID. It's been postponed, so they say it's going to be this year. I don't know whether it will be this year. But a decision will have to be made eventually. So what is going to be China's reaction? How will America try to insinuate itself into the situation? I think will be questions that we will be contending with soon enough. Essentially, it's a joint venture with the Thai company and Thai and the Kuwaiti oil company. They spend all this money doing the survey and all that. They're not going to listen to it and say, you know what, let's not do it. No. They're going to want to have returns, right? Say, I spent all this money looking for this damn field, right? And the good news about this field is that the contaminants are relatively low. So, all this gas that we find these days, they're sour gas, a lot of CO2 in them. So you have to extract the carbon dioxide out of it, and then you can sell the damn things, right? This one, quite sweet, not quite sweet. It's on the sweeter side of things. So if Lang Lebah goes on, right. And then again, we don't know how to answer that. Okay, first of all, the Israel thing, right? The Board of Peace, the explanation that I got was that we were not invited because we do not fully agree with the Gaza plan, Trump's Gaza plan. Whether that's the actual reason, I don't know. But that's the explanation I got. Yeah, thank God we didn't get invited, right? It's like a poison chalice, right? If you get invited, you can't say yes. If you can't really say no either, right? So tricky, right? And Israel. So on Anwar, let me give context on Anwar and the question of Israel in like more rounded sort of context here. Anwar has been accused repeatedly in the media since he was sacked in '98, right, of being a Western lackey, right, bordering into sympathy for Zionism, right? That was the thing that was drummed into our heads for years and years and years, because they wanted to make sure that not only do we get him out of politics, but we decisively, that's the way to get someone out of politics in Malaysia. You accuse them of something else and this, right? I'm sorry, I don't know how to speak about it in a mature way. So that's the way to get rid of a person, and so they repeated it again and again and again. And sometimes Anwar has answered questions to the media in ways that does not really help him, even though they are correct. So in 2012, in response to a question from Shibani Matani, who was until recently with Washington Post, Shibani asked him about your position on Israel. And he said that as long as the aspirations of the Palestinian people are met, I support the security. I think that all efforts must be made to ensure the security of Israel. Everyone forgot the conditional, and everyone has been quoting him on the other side for years and years and years and years, right? Including Faisal and all that. Yeah, good fella, probably my future foreign minister, but he does that, right? He quotes him again and again on that side of this statement, right? And again, I think he spoke to Richard Quest maybe 2 years ago, maybe last year. Again, he said it this way. You know, he's saying the actual position of the Malaysian government for years, for decades. That is the position, right? Two-state solution. Now, if you notice, right, public statements, put aside MFA statements, because MFA statements need to be correct and complete. Public statements by the political side of our ops, right? Do they even mention two-state solution? No. Because it's become so toxic to even concede that Israel should exist. Even the concession, yeah? I mean, even Kyrie has come out against two-state solutions. So there's no such thing. Yeah, I mean, putting aside practicality of two-state solution, yeah? That's something else. Your position is that, right? But we can't even state the position that anymore. Yeah. After what's happened the last 2 years? Oh, has it been 2 years? Gosh, more than 2 years. Yeah. Anything tangentially related to Israel is just explosive. So yeah. So Anwar needs to prove that he is pure on this. That's why he has to go really hard and say, I am a believer in the Palestinian cause, and don't you ever question me on this. Which is why, yeah, which is why we will never be in a position of agreeing to the Gaza plan. Well, I never say never, but I don't see it happening soon.
Okay, any other questions?
Nick Adams, right? So good news, he's not coming. Good news coming. So what happens is that do you know? Do you guys, most of you know Nick Adams? So Nick Adams is this blowhard who is like a media personality of sorts, Australian, but he loves America. He so dearly loves America. I mean, he loves America more than Australia. So he moves to America and becomes a MAGA sort of commentator, and he's so good in his fighting words. When the Australian reporter asked him, "Is it true?" He said, "Well, yeah. I would like to tell you, for the information of the dozens of your readers." So that's implying that the Sydney Morning Herald has only dozens of readers. It's so good, right? I mean, who thinks that like off the top of their heads, right? So he's good. So his nomination lapsed on the 3rd of January. So we were all looking at it and saying, "Oh, lapse," or because Senate sort of like closed the term ended, right? So when the Senate term ends, automatically everyone's nominations go back to the White House. So it's up to the White House to renominate. And we were thinking, well, okay, we saw nominations, renominations. U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, renominated and all that. So, oh, no Adams. Right, so then we heard very indirectly that, oh, he's not coming. So we will have this situation where we will not have an ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Malaysia for some time. The previous ambassador has just left, maybe a couple of days ago, Kagan. I like Kagan, but Kagan was too closely linked to the Biden administration. He served in the Biden NSC, he's an acolyte of Kurt Campbell, so he, even during the, even when arrangements were made for Trump to visit Malaysia, it seems that a lot of things went around the embassy. Went straight around and went to NSC, and embassy was actually not not fully apprised of all the details until quite later. So in a way, yeah, Kagan was a good ambassador, but maybe maybe better to have no ambassador than to have an ambassador who is anybody who's even in the same, has been in the same room as Biden is suspect to these people, right? So yeah. So thank goodness. So DCM will cover for some time to come. And probably it's like your situation in the first Trump administration. You had a DCM, right, running the show throughout the first term. And did it harm things? No, right? I mean, actually, it's pretty good. Yeah. Why do I stand? Got excited.
Any other questions from the audience? Please.
I would like to as well make Adam's question as well and ask that we understand that, or at least the news now today just announced that there's in lieu of Adams will be appointed of a Korean diplomat. Does this, in your, I'd like to invite your views on if you think it suggests an awareness by and response by the Trump administration towards Malaysian sentiments, and if they decide to foster, it's a sign of trying to foster a deeper commitment from the US towards a US-Malaysia relationship. By extension as well. Sorry.
So you're asking, does the
appointment of a Korean diplomat
is that
to the previous
signal?
I understand was a political appointee.
Right.
Then as well, if in the hypothetical scenario that Big Adams was to proceed, how do you think the Malaysian government might respond to that given the significant domestic discourse that occurred?
Right. So if Nick Adams had come, what would have?
Yes, how do you think the Malaysian
Right.
government might respond? Thank you.
Was it you? Or was it Jane? Or was it Ariel? Someone said, and it made a lot of sense, right? If Adams had come, I'll answer the second question first. If Adams had actually turned up, he might have got along with some very key people in Malaysia. I mean, he said some Islamophobic things and all that, but the whole masculinity thing and all that works well with some people in Malaysia, of the non-appointed kind, born into the job kind. I won't say more. I think you can imagine, right? Could have gone along very well with those fellows. I don't know. Really, honestly, I do not know. It's so complicated. I mean, the first time I heard that Nick Adams was not coming was from our mutual friend at Heritage. And I read it as infighting with Imaga. But then again, it could have easily have been Rubio intervening, saying this person is not suitable. Is it a response to the protests? I don't know. I wish I knew. I'm sorry, I have no good answer to that. Yeah, but U.S. ambassadors, are they? This is something else I actually planned to say, but I didn't. I forgot about. U.S. officials it's become quite fashionable to say, oh, US officials are bumbling and they're making mistakes and China is taking over and China is doing fantastically and all that. China is doing fantastically, yes. Chinese diplomats are fantastic, right? But your officials are pretty good as well. The fact that we have exercises of the scale that we have, it's not because of the political leadership. It's because people in your embassies, well, not your embassy, sorry. Their embassies, not you. You are Singaporean, aren't you? Where are you from? Singapore, sorry. Your American embassy officials quite flexible, willing to push the boundaries, willing to think about what can be done despite the constraints, the many constraints. So yeah, that's why we have inventive exercises like we've had with Grace Strike, with Kop Tau Fund. They even extended Grace Strike to include Australia. So it's no longer a bilateral exercise; it's a trilateral exercise. Whose idea was that? It's actually, well, maybe Australians as well, but Americans were flexible enough to think of these configurations, right? Despite the fact that we're not an ally, despite the fact that we have constraints on our side. So yeah, I must, say that, not having a political appointee, having bureaucrats running, officials running the show, it's pretty good. I think a lot possible. Yeah. And I think Nick Adams would have been a distraction. Yeah, distraction is a word used a lot these days, isn't it? Right? I don't want to be a distraction because of the Epstein files. No. Sorry. Sorry, that's a strange aside there. But Adams would have been a distraction. I think every Friday there will be protests in front of the embassy. That's not such an unusual thing, but there will be. He will have access problems. I mean, with top leadership, yes, they will see him, but with the others, right? Do I, as a deputy minister of agriculture, for example, I don't know who that is, but do I want to be seen with Nick Adams? Is it good for me politically? So they won't say no. They'll say I'm busy and all that, right? So yeah, maybe it's a good thing that we don't have Nick Adams there. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Do you have other questions?
From your description of the relationship, it doesn't sound very different from, say, during Najib's time. In the sense that you've had, Anwar for 3 years. And that kind of reaffirms my bias that actually Malaysian foreign policy is very consistent. Because it's run by professionals, generally your bureaucrats, your foreign ministry, your defense ministry. They get the daily business going, and then you have your prime minister who adds color and energy depending on where they come from. If it's Najib, it's a particular flair. If it's Anwar, he brings with it his own Islamist past, but also a certain pragmatism and showmanship. It's really during Ismail and Midin that they didn't really have much time for policy. So would you agree that it has remained quite consistent and not much has changed in terms of the fundamental dynamics and considerations? That's one. But my next question would be, you mentioned Faisal as your next foreign minister, which yes, who knows, right? So in a government that's led by the Islamic Party and Satul, successor, Splinter, what would be your worry or your concern or your expectations for that relationship?
Right.
And I'm sure actually the Americans and actually, foreign missions in KL are kind of looking at the possibility and cultivating the Islamist Party here. So I think in KL there would be this idea that, we should be prepared for that kind of political change and transition, but at the same time, maybe foreign policy will still be quite consistent because the interests are quite stable. Thank you.
Ariel, I'll answer both here. The big questions. And, yes, I agree and I disagree. I agree that the consistency is there, the basic building blocks of relationship, the competent running of things is there. But I do think that individuals like Najib and people around him made a big difference. I think Najib, putting aside all the other things, right? As someone, I mean, number one, a good thing that for most Malaysian leaders, you don't need an interpreter to talk to American president. I think it's a big plus there. Cuts you have a half an hour meeting, you have an half an hour meeting. It's not half an hour minus 10 for translations, right? So that's a big advantage. Right? I also think that during Najib's time, he had a very, very able special envoy and ambassador. And that person he's dead now, his name was Jamaluddin Jarjes. Jamaluddin Jarjes is not a diplomat, he was never a diplomat, well, appointed diplomat, but he was a politician. And sometimes you need a politician to run the show in Washington, D.C., I suspect. Because Jamaluddin Jarjes knew how, I mean, he didn't take no for an answer. So he will go around knocking on doors in Congress, apparently, and just try to get a meeting. He would wine and dine people. Wasn't restricted by the foreign ministry budget. He had his own access to money. He had his own access to Cuban cigars. And he could wine and dine people at the Willard, right? In ways that a typical ambassador of Malaysia in Washington can't do very often. The budget is simply not there. Whereas JJ, my God, right? And he had money to throw at us, even to ISIS, even to do a study with CSIS. That money came from somewhere. It came from JJ. To do a study to raise Malaysia's profile in Washington, D.C. in 2012, I think it was. So Najib's team was good for the relationship. Not so good later. That people do make a difference. I think the Anwar relationship with Trump, I think the personality, the personal element is there. I guess. We've got a pretty good ambassador there now, named Shahrul Ikram, who used to be SecGen of Foreign Ministry, called out of retirement to take over. I think he's doing quite well. But otherwise, Zafrul I think made the difference, right? Yeah, Zafrul being this urbane fellow who could talk to Lutnick in a way that Lutnick understood. Could make. Apparently, they were in very friendly terms. So I think it makes a difference to have these kinds of characters in the administration. Islamic Party. Good God. So America will always engage us at certain levels. At the defense level, they will, almost unaffected, I think, in spite of, the American side will somehow find ways to somehow get things done. Partly because there is already a structure, partly because we sit astride the Malacca Straits, and if you don't want to lose us, I think. Better not. Even if it's run by people you may not necessarily like. But I do think that if it is run by the Islamic Party, that we lose that personal touch, I think. I do not see any leader from within that side of politics who's able to, get in the car with Trump, or even be invited into the car with Trump. But still, even if invited into Trump, to get engaged in a conversation with Trump in that apparently they got along very, very well. They got into the car, talked a bit. The next day, Anwar visited him again before Trump left. They laid out the newspapers in front of him, Trump headlines and all that. No one actually reads the newspapers, as in the printed version anymore. But Trump was, you've seen that photo, right? Trump was looking as if it was a major triumph, right? So yeah, you need personalities to run the relationship in that sense. Yeah. Also, I think PKR has friends within Trump's business circle. I won't say who, but there is that link that is being used to some effect. So that goes around foreign ministry, and I'm told it makes a difference.
Any other questions? I have a question. Okay, perhaps I will ask an additional question. Just to follow up on Gary's question also. Response. I think you mentioned about one Najib, this team, these guys were able to set up a stage to reach the US in an effective way. But you mentioned later on, like, you mentioned that later, right, things started to go down. So could you elaborate on that?
Oh, 1MDB.
Okay.
Yeah, 1MDB. I think so. 1MDB happened, then Trump happened. So I'm not sure if you all remember this meeting. Well, maybe only Malaysians will pay attention. There was this meeting where Najib shows up and Trump was in his first term, and he was saying that we have a proposition for you where we will buy X number of aircraft from Boeing, so on and so forth. Actually, the intention was apparently to get them to drop the Justice Department case on 1MDB. That didn't quite work, and it went downhill after that when the case was not dropped. But yeah, but before that it was good. Also, I think the credit must be given to Najib for, before that, the maintaining a certain distance from America was very much entrenched, especially during Mahathir's time. Mahathir comes to office, and the US ambassador at the time, I forget his name, immediately offered him a meeting at the White House with Reagan. And he said no. Now, that was a very Mahathir move, right? But he said no because he said, look, I cannot be seen to go to America on my first trip. I have to visit every other country in South Asia first. I have to go to Indonesia first, right? Or Singapore first, whichever. Have to go there first. After I'm done with those countries, yes, I will come to you. But no. That kind of ideological sort of like stricture, not so, it's that straitjacket is no longer there. And I think credit goes to Najib for that to a certain extent, right? The reflexive insistence on sovereign equality and reflexive insistence on showing America that we are, somehow not to be pushed around and all that. That is no longer there. I suspect that is also no longer there with another country, Singapore. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So he was problematic for you guys. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, I just have to take another step, right? I don't think you mentioned ASEAN even one time.
Yeah.
Right? Even after a very successful championship there last year, I would say, at least in my books, right? But then again, since your title is the age of Trump and multilateralism, international institutions, all those things are being big to a certain extent. I see Malaysia still interested, perhaps, in participating in what 2.0, maybe AUKUS, second pillar, no, none of this.
So
but how
AUKUS.
about, because I think, sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
No, because Malaysia is still currently the co-chair of the ASEAN-China relations, ASEAN-China dialogue, something like that. So in that sense, just a sense of, where Malaysia sit with the so-called multilateralism, right? Is it about, really thinking that these institutions are going to be useful to Malaysia, or is it, I want to play with the big boys?
Yes, they want to play with the big boys, but they will, I mean, the government, I don't think they want to discard those networks as well. So insistence on ASEAN not to BRICS, that sort of thing will continue. The reason why I didn't mention ASEAN, I guess, I don't know. I guess it's interesting. Yeah, it's almost like therapy right now. I'm just right. Oh, you did not mention ASEAN. Something wrong with your. Something happened in your past. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have a good answer to that. Yeah, it was a successful chairmanship with some hiccups. Yes. The aim of our chairmanship was to look competent, right? Put aside sustainability and inclusivity and all that stuff that we declared, right? In fact, the interesting bit about the theme, we chose exactly the theme that MAGA ended up not liking, inclusivity and sustainability. Really, my God. So, if you see the EAS statement, the chairman's statement, there is no even, usually there will be like, we gathered in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and under the theme of inclusivity. Even that was struck out, at America's insistence, because too woke. Anyway, putting it aside. So I do not see what's happening in the room, but sometimes when the door is about to be closed, I put my leg in, sort of like try to peek from outside, right? Sort of partially. I never got, not even once, I got the sense that at the very top level, enthusiasm for ASEAN was like that, right? No. Yeah. ASEAN important, but were the political leaders pushing for, okay, what can we do here? What can we do there? How can we expand things on the ASEAN side? No, I didn't get the sense at all, It was mostly, any creativity was taking place at the Director General's level, at the SecGen level, but at the ministerial level, it was seen as, I need to do this. I need to do this, I need to show up. Where are my briefing notes? Where are my talking points? Right? And when it's over, oh God, thank goodness it's over. It's very exhausting. I think we had, in total, in October, we had 17 summits, 17. If you count, ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN Korea, zero emissions summit and all that, 17. And Anwar Ibrahim literally said in the closing, thank God. Yeah, he said when he handed it over to the Philippines, because it was exhausting, and the payoffs are not immediate and not apparent to politicians. That's why I think they don't value it as much as perhaps diplomats and academics do. I'm not saying it's unimportant. It's important. It's just that it comes across as very underwhelming to political leaders, especially those who are thinking about domestic angle and all that. And we get questions all the time. How do we relate these issues to domestic audiences? We never have a good answer to that.
Yes, we have come to the end of this session. So please join me in thank you, Shahriman, for this. Thank you for taking time to attend this seminar. Have a good evening ahead.